Hey friends, welcome to my channel. My name is Lynn, and today I have recipe number 5 for you. This is what I'm calling a fancy gatefold card, and the idea behind my recipe cards is just to give you a really easy recipe to follow that you don't have to necessarily measure and create precisely every time. The idea behind the recipe is that you get the gist of what goes into it, and then you kind of just intuitively make this card whenever you feel like it. Kind of like making a chili. You sort of have a rough idea for what goes into a chili, but you're just going to use what's in your pantry at the time that you sit down to make one. And you may not always measure everything precisely. And that's the idea behind my recipe cards. So for this recipe, you're just going to need some cardstock, pattern paper, shape dies, focal images, and sentiment. And so what I'm going to do is, I'm going to make a gatefold, and it's going to be an A2 card. So folded, it's going to be 4 1/4 by 5 1/2, but I'm only going to be able to get one of these fancy gatefolds from a US letter sheet of paper, because I'm actually going to cut this along the, so I have a long strip that's 11 inches, and it's going to measure 5 1/2 tall. So this is 11 inches wide by 5 1/2 tall. And that's so that we can have two gates, a left gate and a right gate, that will fold towards the center, just like a standard gatefold, but they will overlap in the middle. And because they overlap in the middle, it gives us opportunity to create some interesting shapes on that border edge of your gates. So the idea is that all you have to remember is that you have a right gate, and that's going to fold towards the center. You're going to have a left gate that will also fold towards the center, and in the middle you want a section that is the width of your card. So in this case, 4 1/4 wide. So I've got the 11-inch edge up at the top of my scoreboard at the moment. And remember, this is 11 by 5 1/2. So 5 1/2 is the final height of our card. And what I want to do is I just want to put 2 score lines in. And it doesn't really matter where. It may, impact your design ultimately. But if you're just making this for the first time, then just aim for, you could do what I'm using. I'm using 2 3/4 because this is the first time I'm doing this. I thought that would make the math a little bit easier for me, because I want that middle section to be 4 1/4 wide. So I need to add 4 1/4 to this score line. And that's going to take me to a nice even number, 7 inches. That's really the only reason why I picked 2 3/4. Okay, so we're at 7 inches, but that's falling off of my score track. So I'm just going to score instead 4 inches from the opposite end. So I rotate 180 degrees, and then I score at 4 inches. So now what I have is one of my gates is 2 3/4 wide. I've got the width of my card, which is still 4 1/4 wide. And then my other gate, my left gate, is 4 inches wide. And so now that I've done this the one time and I can see how much of an overlap there is, I can always tweak this for the next time. Or if I like how this one turned out, then I can just replicate this. The idea is that the measurements don't really matter too much. You just want a healthy amount of overlap in between. And so what I'm going to do, because this is fancy, I want to actually create an angled cut on this left gate. So I'm not even measuring anything, and I am just going to cut a diagonal line that looks good to me in this moment. And that's kind of the idea behind, if we go back to the analogy of making chili, you kind of just use whatever's in your pantry at the time. And so the next time you go to make chili, maybe it's not exactly the same, but you're also not really measuring each and every ingredient. You're kind of maybe using up what you have. And that's sort of my idea behind recipe cards, because it's just a foundational idea for a card that you can put in your tool belt, and it's easy to kind of whip it out because you don't really need to measure anything if you know the gist of how to put one of these together. So what I'm going to do is leave the right gate the way it is. I'm not going to trim it, although you certainly could. If you wanted, you could trim that one also. And I am going to actually start to decorate this a little bit, and I'm going to show you how to cut pattern papers to fit, because we did just wing it after all. Didn't really measure anything on that front gate. So the right gate was easy. I just cut a piece that was 2.5 by 5.25. But the left gate's a little bit trickier because the left gate I put an angled cut in, and I didn't even really measure where those angles started or ended. So I'm going to use my Easy Postage printable. This is Steampunk Gears. And I'm going to start off by cutting a section that's 5.5 tall. So once I have 5.5 tall, what I can do is just put little pencil marks where the angles need to be, such that I would still have that really nice border all the way around. And then that gives me the perfect angled measured to fit. And it's as easy as that. You don't have to do any measuring. You just hold that pattern paper right up to the angle that's already been cut through your card base, and you just transfer that angle by putting a little pencil mark where you want to make the cut. And I don't mind if my margins aren't 100% equal. I think close enough is good enough most of the time. And in particular with a steampunk theme, I really think that's the case with steampunk. You don't really need anything to be super precise or perfect. And so I think, that's so much of it gets covered up too, as you can start to already see, as I just sort of do a little bit of a dry fit, a little bit of a trial run of collaging up these stamps. Now these postage stamps are from Easy Wonder die number 3, and the Easy Postage printables are designed specifically to work with Easy Wonder die number 3. In fact, one of the 3 PDFs that's part of every collection is called the Easy Guide, and that one has been designed to be cut with the main die as well as the add-on dies to the set. And they are sized and clipped so that you don't have too much extra kind of wasted like color printing. So you can see I'm cutting out these images, which are meant to be kind of your postage stamp designs, and there's a little bit of wiggle room so that if you're positioning them and you're not perfect, it's totally okay. There's a little bit of room for error there, but there's not a lot of extra, and that way it's very economical. I can fit a lot of images on a single US letter sheet of paper, and as well there's little ink waste, and a lot of times the most expensive thing about printing can be the ink and the papers, and so I clip these for that reason, and that way you have very little waste. So I'm gonna start to decorate my card. So my first step is going to be to put down this bit of, it's really gorgeous, it's a pearlescent cardstock available at Cut Cardstock. And I like the contrast of having solid on one side and a really bold, beautiful pattern on the other side. And I'm gonna I thought about how to collage this up, and I don't want to cover up too much of this gorgeous. She's kind of it feels very Victorian to me. And because I don't want to cover her up, but I want her to be part of the collage, what I am going to do is I will actually adhere her to the right flap so that she can still be visible and she's still part of the collage, but when you open the left gate, you can see her in full, because the other two pieces of the collage that I'm adding are not going to be adhered to her. And so this is part of the fun of having a fancier gatefold where the gates overlap a little bit. And the whole idea behind this recipe is to take any shape that you want. So in my case, I'm using these postage stamp shapes, but you could use whatever shapes you want. And by hanging them off the edge of your gate, you can create some really fun, different looks and borders. And it just makes it, I feel, a little bit more interesting than your standard gatefold that meets directly in the center. So I'm just going to collage these up, and I just stamped a sentiment straight onto my one of these empty postage stamps. And because this particular piece is going to layer on top of the hot air balloon piece, I'm just going to put a little bit of low profile foam just to give it a little bit of a lift on that one corner edge. And I'm going to put some 3D glue gel behind the other section. And that way everything can be nice and level. So here's a final look at my fancy gatefold. I hope you enjoyed this recipe for how to make one. And if you follow along with any of my recipes, I hope you'll tag me at Handcrafted on all of the socials so that I can see your twist on a fancy gatefold. And if you're interested in checking out more of my recipe cards, there's going to be a playlist at the end of this video, and that's where you'll find all of my recipe card videos. Thanks so much, and until next time, happy crafting and have a fabulous day. Bye.